weaken as they approach the Kansas-Nebraska lines this evening. However, one or two could sneak across, producing some damaging winds, large hail, and up to 1-inch downpours of rain, mainly west of Highway 25. Tonight's low will be 60 to 65, and over the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, a ridge builds over the area. Temperatures will warm into the upper 80s to low 90s. Evening storm chances are expected both days, coming from the north and west, and these storms have a higher risk of being severe, with potential 60 to 70 mile-an-hour winds, large 1 to 2 inch hail, and even some locally heavy rainfall is possible. Lows will continue to be in that 60 to 65 degree range, and next week will be dry and hot with temperatures in the mid-90s. This meteorologist Chris Schromick in the NWKS Radio Weather Center.
Are pests making your home or business uncomfortable? Call Pest Away in Goodland, Kansas, serving all of Northwest Kansas. They provide top-notch pest control services to keep your space safe and pest-free. From ants to rodents, termites to spiders, our expert team is here to help with effective, safe, and affordable pest control solutions. Don't wait. Call Pest Away today at 785-728-7166 for fast, reliable service. Your home or business deserves the best protection.
Hi, this is Chase Mullering, inviting you to the 13th Annual Greg Close Memorial Demolition Derby this Saturday night at 7 p.m. at the Logan County Fairgrounds in Oakley. This year, we're expecting a big turnout as we're paying out over $23,000 in prize money. We'll be running bone stock, full-size and compacts, mini modifieds, minivans, hobo motor swap, and modifieds. Jason Booker again this year will be paying for the first 25 veterans and first 25 first responders through the gate this Saturday night in Oakley.
Looking for insurance that actually puts you first? At the insurance agency in downtown Goodland, we're independent, which means we work for you. Whether it's auto, home, crop, or business, we shop top carriers to get you the best coverage at the best price. No pushy sales, just honest advice from people who live right here in your community. Give us a call today at 785-899-5011 or stop by 1020 Main in Goodland and let's get you covered. The Insurance Agency. Insurance the way it should be.
Big deals are rolling at Hurl Chevrolet GMC in Goodland, Kansas. Drive off in a 25 GMC Sierra 1500 with $3,750 purchase allowance or 0% APR for 36 months and no payments for 90 days. Upgrade to the Sierra 1500 Denali and get up to $5,750 off or 0% for 36 months. Or go big with the Sierra 3500 Pro. $2,750 off or 3.9% for 48 months. Don't wait. Stop by Hurl Chevrolet GMC in Goodland today or shop online at hurlchev.com.
Summer is heating up, and Hoover Lumber Ace Hardware in Goodland and Colby has everything you need to make the most of it. Tame that lawn with top-notch weed and feed from Ultimate Fertilizer, and keep those bugs away with powerful pesticides. Plus, Ego mower, blowers, and trimmers to get that job done fast. Fire up some summer flavor with a Traeger grill or a Blackstone griddle, and if you're building a fence or even fixing a sprinkler, they've got the building materials and supplies to keep your projects moving. Hoover Lumber Ace Hardware, your summer project headquarters.
Looking for insurance that actually puts you first? At the insurance agency in downtown Goodland, we're independent, which means we work for you. Whether it's auto, home, crop, or business, we shop top carriers to get you the best coverage at the best price. No pushy sales, just honest advice from people who live right here in your community. Give us a call today at 785-899-5011 or stop by 1020 Main in Goodland and let's get you covered. The Insurance Agency. Insurance the way it should be.
At FNB Bank, we understand the backbone of our community is our local farmers and ranchers. Whether you're growing crops, raising livestock, or investing in new equipment, we're here to help you succeed. Our agricultural loans are tailored to meet the unique needs of your farm, with flexible terms from people who understand what it takes to make it in agriculture. When you partner with FNB Bank, you're working with neighbors who know the land and are invested in your success. FNB Bank, rooted in our community, growing with you. Member FDIC.
There's nothing worse than having your equipment break down, especially when you need it the most. So don't let that happen to you. Make sure your trucks are ready to haul with the help of Wilkins Truck and Trailer in Goodland. Replace that old ragged tarp with a Sherlock Super Duty tarp, and while they're there, let them put on a Sherco 4500 Series HD electric tarp roller or a Pro Trap electric trap opener, helping you save time when it matters most. Call Wilkins today and schedule an appointment to get your rig in at 785-899-5454 or visit wilkinstruck.com.
You ready? Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4!
It's time for the Morning Blitz with Ross Volkmer.
If you want to win in football, it all starts up front. Mass kicks ass.
The High Plains only local sports talk show.
Listen to this guy. He knows what he's talking about.
Broadcasting live on Rocket 102.5 and streaming on YouTube, Facebook, and X. Covering it all from the preps.
Up ahead to Blair Lennon. Lennon, the crossover, back to Cure. Hello, boom! A two-handed tomahawk flush.
To the pros.
Shotgun snap to Nix. Protection is good. Bold loads it up. He's got it. A receiver there. Franklin makes the catch in the end zone. Touchdown, Denver.
The Blitz is presented by Earl Chevrolet GMC, Hoover Lumber Ace Hardware, and F&B Bank. Along with the insurance agency, the Farmer State Bank in Oakley, the Cowboy Corner Express, and Equity Bank of Hoxie, Quinter, and Grinnell.
Let's go to work.
In the air, left field. All the way back. They tied it. 8 runs on 8 straight hits off the mat. It's 11-11.
George is going to go for it on 4th and 2. And it's Lance throwing up top, touchdown, brought in by Will Dissly.
Down a fly ball. This carries back. It keeps carrying back. It is gone! Cal Raleigh with a rainmaker just over the wall in right field. His 42nd home run this year. It's the most ever by a switch-hitting catcher in single-season Major League history.
And good Friday morning, everybody. Final day of the week and the first day of August 2025. Glad you could join us here on the Morning Blitz. No matter which way you're doing so, on the radio on Goodland's Rocket 102.5 or NWKSradio.net. Or, of course, on the Earl Chevrolet GMC video stream on X, Facebook, YouTube. Appreciate you tuning in no matter which way you are doing so here today on what is a beautiful, and I do mean a beautiful morning here on the High Plains. Just absolutely gorgeous, cool, little smell of moisture in the air. Can't complain about that after what it looks like, judging by the rainfall reports, anywhere from probably a half an inch here in town in Goodland, up to maybe over to around an inch in Colby is what it looks like. A really nice rain. I mean, I was visiting with my folks who, of course, live over in southeast Nebraska, and they were talking about how this has been kind of an interesting year from their perspective when it comes to the amount of rain that they have gotten at times, and in particular this time of year, the Julys, this early late July, late June, throughout July, off and on, and now here in August. It's kind of odd to see all the precipitation that has come, because usually it's just dry as a bone, and we'll just pump water and irrigate. It seems like that's the way it is usually at home. So yeah, and a really nice rain, and a gorgeous 63 degrees here this morning. And this is the kind of weather I can get behind right here. Love this type of weather. 81 degrees, the expected high here today. When Rick said we'll have a little bit of a warmer weekend on tap coming here over the weekend, just a little bit warmer, not a whole lot. 85 on Saturday, 84 on Sunday, and then 86 on Monday. And then temperatures are going to make their way up into the 90s starting on Tuesday through the rest of next week. So we're going to warm back up here after a little bit of a cool spell over the next couple of days. So there you go. A quick look at the weather for you looking ahead here for the next week or so. But so glad you decided to join us here on the Morning Blitz on this Friday, August the 1st. Starting talking sports, anybody happen to watch NFL preseason last night? It was the first, as my wife told me, and she had read it on social media, and it was she was saying, well, boys, we've made it. We made it. We now have football from this day forward all the way to February. And yes, I know it's preseason football, but it is football nonetheless. And so we made it last night. The Chargers blew out the Lions 34-7 in the Hall of Fame game, and really, that game, I don't know. It's a game where you're not going to see pretty much any type of starters. It's all going to be backups, and that's perfectly fine. But you are going to get a chance to hear the interviews of the Hall of Famers, which is cool. Interesting class. Jared Allen was pretty. I don't know why Jared Allen, the previous defensive end or pass rusher for the Vikings, what I remember him being a big part of. I'm surprised he's not on television. He's got a great personality, and I'm surprised he's not on TV. I'm curious if we'll see that happen in the next. Maybe he just doesn't want to do it, but he just has this great bubbly personality that I think would just be so popular amongst people in being in some sort of media role. But anyway, it was great to see a little bit of football last night. You got to take everything that you see in these games with a grain of salt. I mean, you might see some guys out there, they're going to be building some depth and doing some things of that sort. But for the most part, what you got, Raleigh? Raleigh's coming in studio. What do you have here today? Oh, okay. There you go. Yeah. Raleigh's got to send the rainfall reports to Joel. There you go. Yeah, you're good. Take those, Raleigh. Appreciate it. Oh, it's fine. No worries. Anyway, back to last night. I thought one quick thing on the NFL preseason game that I wanted to point out. I thought it was a really good performance from Trey Lance. 13 of 20, 120 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. Had a couple of rushes for 8 yards. I mean, that was a guy, remember, he was taken out of North Dakota State by, I think it was the 49ers, right? Yeah, and they were kind of thinking he might be a great quarterback, and just really has never, ever had any great showings whatsoever. He's had stops in Dallas and now at the Chargers. He looks good. Once again, I don't know what that means going forward. He's not going to surpass Justin Herbert unless Herbert gets hurt. But I would say Trey Lance looked really good last night. Now, once again, it's the Hall of Fame game. You're playing against second and third stringers at best. So I'm not going to put a whole lot of stock into that. But Trey Lance, I thought, looked pretty darn good in the little bits that I saw. I didn't even watch it live. I got back late last night, and so I was watching the replay on NFL Network for a little bit while I did some work, because I went actually down to the Wallace County Fair last night. Shout out to Sharon Springs and the Wallace County Fair. I went down and watched Bryce Leatherwood, a young man out of Nashville who is really good. I mean, a very talented musician, country music guy. And he's got a very bright future, and went down and watched him live there at the Wallace County Fair. It was a great get for the Wallace County Fair. I mean, shout out to the Wallace County, I think it's community development, and all their sponsors and their team that they got. Bryce Leatherwood was a great get. He was winner of the Voice season 22. Met him after the show, very personable guy, and was and got his autograph and visited with him for a little bit. But yeah, that was fun to go down to the Wallace County Fair. Shout out to Sharon Springs and the Wallace County Fair. And Bryce Leatherwood was a great show last night, so I appreciate them getting him here. And he was telling everybody on the stage that he had got up at 3:00 in the morning to leave from Nashville, flew to Denver, then drove. I mean, you talk about a day. That is a day. But it was a good one there, and a good show down in Wallace County. And shout out to the Wallace County Fair. It was fun to go down there last night and spend a little bit of time. Before we get into our first segment, which I would love to have your help on the F&B Bank text line at 785-899-2222. We'll get you the show rundown here real quickly. We'll have Christian Saez join us from the DNVR Rockies, our good friend who covers the Rockies for DNVR Sports. We're going to talk what the Rockies did at the trade deadline. We're going to talk trade deadline. It was actually a very interesting trade deadline when all things all shook down. We'll get to that in just a little bit more here in a second. So we'll talk now with Christian Saez coming up here in the second segment in about 10 to 15 minutes. Segment 3, I don't know. Something's going on in Washington. I don't know with the Commanders and Terry McLaurin, and I've got a question on that in segment 3. And then some Kansas football news in the walk-off, including a little bit of a local flavor to it as well in multiple ways. So we'll get to all that here coming up on the show. F&B Bank text line always open at 785-899-2222. That's 899-2222. If you want to be part of the Morning Blitz, would love to hear from you and have you text in the show. Keep me company on this Friday morning. Before we get into the question of the day, I just want to put, it was a very interesting trade deadline, and we'll once again touch more on this with Christian Saez, but I'm telling you, it was a busy trade deadline on the local front. For the Royals and the Rockies. The Royals, both, it seemed like a lot of teams. It really didn't matter. Not just the Royals and the Rockies. There were a lot of teams that sat on their hands through a majority of the time leading up to the trade deadline. And then it was like with the last 4, 5, 6 hours left before the trade deadline was here, they were just like, all right, let's go make some deals. And boom, 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 boom. And it was like they were waiting for something to happen, and then it did, and it took off, and there were lots of deals. Now, were there massive names moved? A lot of guys, probably the bigger bats names, were Gino Suarez for the Diamondbacks and also Josh Naylor from the Diamondbacks. I mean, Arizona had pretty much a fire sale. Speaking of fire sales, we'll talk about the Twins, who there's 26 guys on a Major League Baseball roster. The Twins traded 10 of them. They completely sold everybody that they had. There was some teams that did a lot of selling, but we'll get more on that with Christian Saez. But the Royals, I wanted to hit this real quickly. They got going. They started becoming a little bit more. They kind of bought and they kind of sold. They traded Freddie Fermin away to San Diego for a couple of pitchers. Then they went out and acquired a lefty from Pittsburgh, Bailey Falter. Probably the thing that they did most successfully, I think, at the trade deadline was try to provide more pop in the lineup in the outfield. That's what it looked like to me. They went out and got Randall Grichuk from Arizona, which he provides some pop in the lineup. But yesterday they went and traded for the Giants' Mike Yastrzemski. I think he's the grandson of Carl Yastrzemski. Nonetheless, that's a guy that can hit power, has some power as well, and plays in the outfield. I think that was their biggest thing that they wanted, was to find more pop in the lineup and to do it without having to give up too much. And I think they were able to do that. But they were able to get I think that was probably, in my opinion, the biggest signing that they had at the trade deadline was getting Mike Yastrzemski from the Giants. So they bring a little bit more pop to the lineup, do the Royals. So that was what the Royals did. In the Rockies, as we'll hear Christian Saez talk to us here in just a little bit, they did what they, I think, were trying to do. They accomplished what they were trying to do. That's the way I'll put it. They were able to send, Tyler Kinley to another team. They were able to get Ryan McMahon to another team in the Yankees. Kinley went to the Braves, McMahon the Yankees, and they were able to get Jake Bird sent off as well. He went to the Yankees as well and picked up a couple of minor league prospects. I mean, that's the thing. Like, and that's why the MLB trade deadline is. You're going to trade away guys that and more than likely in return get multiple prospects. And that's what the Rockies did at their trade deadline. We'll get more details on that with Christian Saez. But I thought it was an interesting trade deadline just to see particularly just how it all went along. Most of the morning yesterday, there wasn't a whole lot of news, maybe one every hour and a half. And there was, here's someone's trading. But then all of a sudden it got past noon local time, and all of a sudden, bam, 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 bam. And they were trading everything. And there were some, and that you can go online to ESPN or your favorite sports website and read, who were the winners and who were the losers of the trade deadline. No doubt the Mariners, Padres, Phillies were probably the biggest winners. Heck, the Astros were pretty big as well, but no doubt probably the Mariners were the biggest winners because they were able to add both Josh Naylor and Gino Suarez, who were on the Arizona Diamondbacks this season, and pretty darn good power bats for Arizona. They added them both to that lineup with Cal Raleigh, which gives them some very, very, Mariners are going for it this year. The Phillies were really big. The Padres were very, very good. They got closer Mason Miller. So they had a really, really good showing. And I thought that was probably the biggest winners. And the biggest loser was the Minnesota Twins, because like I said, they traded 10 of their 26-man roster away, which they hopefully got a lot of good prospects back. That's what you hope. And you just don't know probably for a year or so. Okay, I want to get to my question of the first segment here. And this can be, I would pertain it more to college athletics, and it doesn't matter. But it was announced here a couple of days ago that K-State basketball is going to do a home-and-home series with Missouri starting here to open up the season here for men's basketball. They're going to start it this year, and it's going to go next year. This year they are at Missouri playing. Next year they are going to play at Bramlage Coliseum. And it got me wondering, I'm curious, no matter what fan you are of a team, whether it's KU, K-State, Colorado, Nebraska, or any other college out there, what is a matchup that you would like to see coming up down the line? And especially with conference realignment, what matchups would you like to see happen for your favorite team? Who would you like to see them take on in the coming years? I know one that intrigues me a lot personally, but I'm nervous about it, to be totally honest with you, is probably Nebraska and Kansas State in football. They did recently play in basketball, and K-State took 2 out of 3. Luckily, Nebraska got the last laugh, so I feel better about it, but still took 2 out of 3. But in my household, that would be an interesting game with Kansas State and Nebraska facing off on the gridiron. And it's like I said, it would be, if it was a one and done type deal, it'd be hard, because if I end up losing, I have to hear from it for the rest for a long, long time probably. But I mean, that's, and the thing is, if you look at college football and scheduling, seeing those type of games, like maybe it's a Nebraska, Kansas, or a Nebraska, Kansas State, or, just a few years ago, just last year and the year before that, it was Nebraska, Colorado, which is great. And listening to a lot of fans and media members in Nebraska, they would say, well, we would love to have Colorado and play them every year if we could, kind of make it a rivalry, an outside of conference rivalry, kind of like what, Georgia Tech is, or something along those lines. I don't know if that's going to happen. It's probably not going to happen, because there's no incentive to scheduling hard outside of your conference, particularly if you play 9 conference games like the Big 10 and the Big 12 do. There's no reason to schedule outside of your conference really hard, because you're going to play a really good conference slate and 9 games of it. Why would you then force a 10th really tough game or 11th really tough game on your schedule, when you can just go get these games against, whoever you want to, Directional State or Akron or some MAC school or a team from the Sun Belt? Why would you do that? And like K-State this year has North Dakota is one of those type of games. In football, they have Army, which, by the way, will be a challenge. I don't care who you are. Getting prepared for Army is hard. Nonetheless, like I said, the one game that I can think of would be interesting in my household would be a Nebraska-Kansas State game in football. That would be an interesting one. But honestly, any of the old Big 12 games with Nebraska would be interesting to me. The Colorado game was good. If there was Missouri, that would be interesting. If it was Oklahoma, which I think is scheduled down the road a little bit, any of the Big 12 teams would probably be an interesting game I'd like to see in the coming years. Like, I was trying to think, for Kansas and Kansas State, once again, old Big 12 games would be probably the ones that are most interesting to see. Whether it is K-State, Missouri, or which has happened in football and now it's happening in basketball. It's Kansas, Missouri's happened in football and basketball. Kansas, Nebraska, to see those, I think always the more interesting games to me are the ones that are kind of regional. I mean, what if it was Kansas and Iowa, or K-State and Iowa? K-State, Iowa would be a very interesting game. That'd be a fascinating football game because of the history of kind of Chris Kleiman being an Iowa guy. That would be kind of interesting to me. But yeah, that would be intriguing. I'd be down to see that. So, let's say anything kind of in the Midwest, even a Minnesota, Kansas State game. I would like to see those games that you could probably get on a bus or drive to are those games that are intriguing. I mean, yeah, don't get me wrong. Is it cool to see Michigan play whoever, Georgia? Yes. Is it great to see that? Is it cool to see Alabama take on USC? Yes, those are cool. Those are helmet games. Those are big time games. But I don't know. I would love to see I just love to see more of the regional games. The games that used to be, we scheduled these teams because they were within driving distance. A little bit of an old school feel to it. I think it'd be fun to see those games. And I'd like to see a few more of those. I just don't think we're going to. Just because unless everybody gets on the same scheduling page and everyone starts playing 9 conference games, and then it equals out and you have 3 non-conference games, and then maybe everybody's like, well, we're going to do 1, non-conference games that's going to go against a major opponent, and then 2 bye games, as they kind of become known as. You pay the opponent to come to you, and you better beat them. Otherwise, you pay them to beat you, which is pretty sad, but has happened before. I don't know. I thought that was interesting. And I like that you're seeing, and you see it more in basketball because it's a more forgiving sport. You can lose a game here or there and be okay. You just don't see it in football as much. But I would love to see more regional, particularly in college football, regional games being played. Border states or states within driving distance face each other. It'd get great crowds going to games, and I think that would help with crowds too. I mean, that's one thing that's been hard. I think attendance overall in sporting events has kind of gone down a little bit because of the convenience of being at home and, having your own refrigerator and food and restroom all right there. And the games are in 4K, which are amazing. And surround sound makes you feel like you're there. And heck, if you want to sync up your favorite radio broadcast, you can do that too. I mean, it can be a great experience not going to the games. But it's also an amazing experience to go to those. And I think we could see a little bit better attendance if you had more games that happened with more of a regional flair. I guess that's the way I would put it. Could you have like I said, your Iowa, your Kansas States, your Kansas and Arkansas, or something along those lines? I mean, crossing conference lines, but keeping it semi-close. I think that would be fun to see. I'd like to see that. All right. So like I said, games you'd like to see. If you want to hit me up throughout the break, hit me up on the FB Bank text line at 785-899-2222. Or you can comment, of course, on Facebook, X, or YouTube. We can see those comments up on the screen as well. But all right, we got plenty more to get to here. Coming up later on the show, what is going on in Washington with wide receiver Terry McLaurin, who wants out? I do not understand that. We will discuss that coming up in segment 3. And up next, Christian Saez, DNVR Rockies. We're going to talk what the Rockies did at the trade deadline and what the rest of Major League Baseball did at the trade deadline. That is next. Stick around. You're listening to a Friday edition of the Morning Blitz.
This summer, NWKS Radio is bringing the party to you with Rock the Block. You could win the ultimate backyard prize pack, a big dog cooler, lounge chairs, a 4-piece patio set, an $8,000 hot tub from Paradise Spas, plus installation credit from Lore Electric. We're crashing your neighborhood with giveaways, games, and special surprises all summer long. Enter now at nwksradio.net and let's rock the block. Powered by NWKS Radio and your favorite local sponsors.
If you're shopping for a banking institution, visit with Equity Bank of Hoxie, Grinnell, and Quinter, Kansas. The Equity Bank is heavily invested in local business and activities contributing in many ways back to their community. Their employees are involved with many organizations and area events. Plus, a lot of experience comes with that staff. You'll find valuable local assistance when you bank at the Equity Bank of Hoxie, Grinnell, Quinter, and other locations in Western Kansas. The Equity Bank, member FDIC.
It's time for a check of the markets with the Anderson Trade Group on the Kansas Farm and Ranch Radio Network.
This is Austin Wright with the Anderson's Trade Group and your morning market update. The current time is 8:05 a.m. At the pause, September 25 corn, $3.93 3/4. December 25 corn, $4.13 1/2. March 26 corn, $4.40 1/4. September KC wheat, $5.22 1/2. December KC wheat, $5.42 1/2. March 26 KC wheat, $5.61 1/4. August soybeans, $9.62. November soybeans, $9.87 3/4. January soybeans, $10.06. Dow Jones futures are currently down 363 points at 43,942. S&P 500 futures are down 61 points at 6,313. NASDAQ futures are down 268 points at 23,096. Gold is up $42.26 at 3,390. Crude oil is up 9 cents at $69.39. For your grain marketing needs or more information on our freedom pricing tools, you can reach the Kansas City office, Jared Law, Tyler Gosch, Tom Saludo at 913-748-3000. In Colorado, John Hankey and John Stiles, 970-744-4484.
The Anderson Trade Group, proud market partners with Kansas Farm and Ranch Radio. Find out more at andersongrain.com. The risk of loss through trading futures and or options is substantial, and each investor and or trader must consider whether this is a suitable investment. Past performance, whether actual or indicated, is not indicative of future results. The Anderson Trade Group has no guarantee that the advice given will result in profitable trades. Wreak havoc on post-harvest stored grains. A strong control plan helps stop insects before they start. At Central Life Sciences, we believe in making every kernel count towards your profits. That's why Gravista Insecticide, a grain protectant, features a synergized insecticide with an insect growth regulator. Now available in a convenient quart size, designed for empty bin treatments to help you store smart and make every kernel count. Contact Maya Butler at bugfreegrains.com to learn more.
The only way to start your day.
I don't know how to put this, but I'm kind of a big deal.
With Ross Volkmer and the Morning Blitz.
Well, like I was saying earlier in the show, it was a quite busy trade deadline at the gun, it seemed like. Throughout most of the time, weeks leading into it, there wasn't a whole lot of stuff, but get to the final 4 to 6 hours, and everybody jumped on the bandwagon of trying to move pieces and trying either to dump off guys or making their teams better for the postseason run. We're pleased to welcome onto the program our good friend from DNVR Rockies, Christian Saez, who joins us now. Christian, good morning. How are we doing today?
Good morning. I've got mixed emotions, right? Now we're done with the drafts. We're done with the trade deadline. And, I cover a team that's not headed towards the playoffs. So, it's going to be a long couple months. But, I'm glad to be here. Happy to be back on the show.
It's the dog days of summer, right?
That it is.
Christian, I wanted to get your thoughts. I feel like, in my opinion, Colorado, the Rockies did what they had to do. They needed to find a way to find some new homes for some guys, and I believe they did that with the guys they kind of needed to get out the door.
Yeah. I was talking to someone yesterday, and they were asking, how would you grade what the Rockies did during the trade deadline? And I think confidently I was able to say they did about a B's worth of work, if I was grading them, I'd give them a B on that scale, just because, like you said, they were able to move a couple pieces. You traded Ryan McMahon, which was the big piece for the Rockies. He was a guy that you probably should have traded 2 years ago at the peak of his value, but for whatever reason, you held on to him. Now they were able to trade him for a couple good prospects that the Yankees were desperate to have some good fielding. So you got some good return there. You offloaded Tyler Kinley, who's just a veteran that I honestly didn't expect them to get anything for. So the fact that they were even able to just dump his salary was totally fine. And then you got, moved on from Jake Bird. You got a couple prospects back, and Jake Bird was a tradable piece that you thought earlier in the year he was going to be a good piece to get back. His numbers kind of ballooned a little bit in this last month. So the fact they were able to get two prospects for Bird, it was good return for what the Rockies did. Where I think I would have wanted to see more is, this is a team that's on pace to still have the worst record in the history of baseball. And you see what the Twins did, the fire sale that they had, and the amount of guys that they were able to basically offload. I would have liked to see a version of that for the Rockies. There was still a couple players that still remain on the roster that I think you could have even just offloaded salary-wise, veteran players that you don't need long-term. And those players are still on the roster. And so, it wasn't the worst trade deadline the Rockies have had, but I still think there was a little bit more work that could have been done.
At the same time, though, I mean, yeah, obviously they could have dumped off a whole lot more. Do you think that's do you think the reason they didn't do that is from their side, or because they weren't getting what they wanted for those players? Or do you think they just didn't even try to sell them?
I think it was a little bit of both. I do think they were fielding offers, and there was kind of two two aspects of this. On one hand, there's a couple veterans that I think we were all, Rockies analysts and Major League Baseball kind of thought the Rockies were going to move on from. Jimmy Herget was another relief arm that, he's a veteran, not part of this rebuild for the Colorado Rockies. And with how hot the reliever market is right now, you had thought the Rockies would be able to get something back from him. So that was a little bit of a surprise that they didn't, try to get anything for a guy like Jimmy Herget. But on the other side of that, there have been a lot of reports saying that other teams were very interested in two of the Rockies' young, talented relievers, guys who have plenty of team control left, Seth Halverson and Victor Vodnik. Both of those guys throw 100-plus miles an hour, kind of closer-style pitchers coming out of the bullpen. And yes, they're young. Some of their numbers reflect how young they are and the fact that they still need to develop. But at the same time, the tools they have as relievers are very, very promising. And I think a lot of teams were recognizing that, along with the value that they have by having years of team control. I'm a little surprised by how hot the reliever market was, that the Rockies weren't able to get a team like the Yankees to overpay on a really pretty high leverage reliever. So that was kind of my take on it. Is I think they could have gotten an overpay on a guy like Seth Halverson or Victor Vodnik, and I'm surprised they didn't move Jimmy Herget. But like I said, I gave it a B grade. I think they at least got some return for some of the guys that they needed to, and now the Rockies can look ahead.
Christian Size, our guest here on the Morning Blitz, talk to us on the Hoover Lumber Ace Hardware hotline. Big picture, looking at Major League Baseball and the trade deadline, was this an entertaining trade deadline to you, or was it a little bit ho-hum? I just kind of thought it was interesting how it was so slow starting, and then it really ramped up in the last 4 or 5 hours. What was your thoughts just overall on this trade deadline?
It's funny you said, that it was kind of slow starting out, and you're right, it was. But I think the biggest trade of this entire, I guess, quote unquote deadline was Rafael Devers, and that happened over a month ago, right? And I think if the Rafael Devers trade had been made in the middle of the trade deadline, when the Red Sox traded him to the Giants, I think that would have been the big shocking, oh my gosh, no one saw that coming, and it would have taken over the trade deadline. Just the fact, though, that trade happened, a month ago and not really during the last few days or minutes of the trade deadline, I think the deadline, like you said, kind of felt like it didn't have as much air under it. It felt like, you're always going to get the chaos of deals being made at the last second, but there wasn't any big surprises. I think the Mariners did a good job going out and getting Eugenio Suarez. I think they've been on the cusp of being a contender for years now, and it's just always evaded them. They need a big player like Gino, to play and get some time out there in Seattle. So I think the Mariners did a really good job in that. I think, the Astros did a good job picking up Carlos Correa again, especially with the Twins offloading $30 million of his salary, or paying $30 million of his salary, I should say, to play there. So there definitely was some good moves that I think were a little surprising, but at the same time, like you said, it didn't feel like, the biggest trade deadline we had ever seen. It kind of felt like it's come and gone, and now we're back into the action.
You mentioned Rafael Devers being probably it was probably the biggest name that was moved. There were some other guys that were moved that were pretty big. Carlos Correa, a bit of a surprise going back to the Astros. Shane Bieber getting moved to Toronto. Fire thrower Mason Miller from the A's getting moved. I mean, there were some of the big names though that got moved, but like you said, there weren't a lot of other big splash names.
Yeah, and there weren't. I think the biggest thing for me is there weren't really any huge surprises, right? Mason Miller getting traded, that was a good move by the Padres. We saw some moves where you look at that, you can kind of look at it and say, hey, this was a surprisingly good move, but these are players we were expecting to see traded. It was just about who ended up trading them and for what. Whereas the Rafael Devers trade was a shocking blockbuster deal. Kind of felt like it kind of felt like the Luka Doncic trade in the NBA, just baseball version. And so, I think we didn't see any huge trades like that, but I still think it was a good deadline. I think a lot of teams, feel pretty good about things. I think there are plenty of teams that, or at least fan bases, that don't feel good about what their team did. And I think, like I said, for Rockies fans, at least, I think they're kind of somewhere in the middle there. They're not upset about this deadline, but, I still think there was a little bit more room the Rockies could have done to get better.
Christian Sizer, our guest in the Morning Blitz. I was curious what your thoughts were on three teams in the National League that really didn't do much. The Brewers, the Cubs, and the Dodgers. They're all kind of leading their respective divisions, but they really didn't do much at the trade deadline to kind of better their chances, it seemed.
Yeah, I think for honestly all three of those teams, when you've had a pretty good season, I guess the Dodgers have had some ups and downs. Same thing with the Cubs, but the Brewers are getting hot right now. All three of those teams are playoff teams. To me, it looks just like a front office that's trying to play it safe. They're trying to say, hey, we've got pieces already as a part of our roster. We're already heading towards the playoffs, and maybe we're just wanting to add one or two more guys that can booster the bullpen or do something like that that can help us towards the World Series. But I wasn't too shocked. I'm usually not too shocked when contenders kind of keep their cards close to their chest. I understand the fan base, especially for Cubs fans and Brewers fans. I understand those fan bases being frustrated that their team didn't do more. But like I said, they're still well on pace with the roster they have to make it to the playoffs and do well in the playoffs. So I guess I just can't say I'm too surprised. They're still very good teams.
Christian, I found before the deadline, I kept saying, it's a different time than what maybe it used to be, 10 years ago in Major League Baseball. With the expanded postseason, there's more teams in the race later on in the season, and they kind of have to decide if they're going to fight for that postseason spot, if they're going to get off. How much more difficult do you think it is for teams and front office personnel to say, well, we're going to be sellers or we're going to be buyers, and make that decision based upon the expanded playoffs nowadays?
Well, that's a great question. And I do think it changes the dynamic of it. And look at what happened with the Angels, right? The Angels, there are teams that kind of were teetering on that line of, do we want to be buyers? Do we want to be sellers? And there's a lot of factors that go into it, the expanded playoffs being one of them. And, the Angels went out and on paper, at least, looks like they wanted to go be buyers at this deadline, which I actually think that was one of the bigger surprises from the deadline perspective that we saw. So I think it pushes teams, to kind of make those decisions at an earlier date. Now, I just, at the same time, the depth that you need to be competitive and Major League Baseball front office members, they know this, but the depth you need to be competitive once you get to the playoffs. We saw plenty of really good teams last year in the playoffs just not make it to the World Series because they just lacked the depth of talent. And it's pretty drastic. So that I also think adds to the fact that, like you said, Cubs fans, Brewers fans, Dodgers fans might not feel too happy about this trade deadline because they recognize how much talent you need to truly win a World Series. And an expanded playoff format definitely adds a piece to that.
I just think it's so interesting. Those teams are maybe 4, 5, 6 games out of that last wild card spot, and they have to decide, well, we're either going to get in this thing or we're going to. And then if you are a team that says, I think we're going to punt to next year, I mean, you are losing a lot of, you're kind of telling your team that, we don't believe in you, and you're also telling the fan base to believe. That's a hard thing to do and a hard position to be in.
And the Giants, I mean, you talk about being a team that kind of is teetering on the edge going into this trade deadline. The Giants came into this season really setting the pace for the National League West, which was shocking because you look at their roster and aside from, a couple guys, there isn't really any standout players like there used to be when you had Buster Posey and Madison Bumgarner and Crawford and all of those star named players that the Giants used to have. But the Giants were unbeatable at the beginning of the season, one of the best teams in all of baseball. And even when they slowed down, they were still in that 1, 2, 3 slot between the Padres and the Dodgers in the top of the NL West and definitely competing for a wild card spot. And then since they've acquired Rafael Devers, to no fault of Devers, their record has just completely tanked. They have one of the worst records in baseball since that date. And Giants fans, front office, management is sitting here, scratching their head saying, hey, how do we want to approach the playoffs? Do we transition to a rebuilding team? Do we punt this season to next year, like you said, or even a year beyond that? Or do we really try to capitalize on what we got at the beginning of the year and push towards the playoffs? I think this trade deadline showed that a team like the Giants is not really punting this season, but definitely pivoting a little bit because, you traded Duvall for a guy that you're not going to see for a little bit. You traded Mike Yastrzemski at the wire for a prospect, right? And that to me shows that you're not expecting to get returns from that this season. I think the Giants might be one of those teams that's pivoting towards a 2026, 2027 rebuild.
Arizona's probably in the same boat in that department, I would guess.
Yep.
I mean,
Arizona. Yeah.
See, I'm an Arizona fan, and so I've kind of watched this whole thing unfold, and I just think this team has had a lot of really good talent, but they just couldn't stay healthy enough and keep winning. And so now you're like, well, we got to punt on this year, and you're like, we're blowing a year of great young talent, but that's just the way you have to accept it in baseball. It's just what you have to do. So Christian Tsai is our guest here on the Morning Blitz. Before we let you go, Taylor, the Rockies have played better baseball since the All-Star break a little bit. Why do you think? What do you think has caused that?
I think there's a couple things. I think, on one hand, I think some of the veteran players are just, well, first of all, we're getting some guys that are healthy again. Tovar's back in the lineup. He was injured for a while. Tolia just got brought back up from the minors. He's still struggling with strikeouts, but there's some pieces that are falling back into place. But I also think some of the younger guys, the guys that are sticking a little bit, they're starting to find their groove. A guy like Tyler Freeman is in line or is in the race for a National League batting title, which is crazy to think about, coming from a Rockies perspective. Mickey Moniak, another, young player who has bounced around to a couple different teams. He's having a career season with the Rockies, and so, there are little bright spots that you can kind of see that are starting to fill in some of the gaps. But, at the same time, the Rockies are still losing 2 out of 3 of every series. They're still on pace to lose more games than the Chicago White Sox last year. So I was asked yesterday on our show, what am I expecting out of the rest of this season for the Rockies? And I said, hey, we know we lost a couple relievers during this deadline. We lost Ryan McMahon. I think there's a chance it gets a little bit worse just because you no longer have some of the talent you had from before. But at the same time, it has to get worse because you got to be able to give some of the young players, these prospects, you want to give them a shot. You want to let them see what it's like to get some big league at bats, get some big league innings. And I think that's what the latter half of this season is going to be about. And, hopefully we get to see a couple more debuts and just get to keep throwing some prospects up to the big leagues and seeing if they stick. So I'm curious to see how these next 2 months go for the Rockies.
One of those guys is Warming Bernabel, who is really hitting the ball well. What have you seen from him? I admit, when I saw the name, I thought that has to be a typo, but it's not. And he's actually played pretty darn good baseball, especially hitting the ball.
He has. He's been a bright spot for all of us. It's funny because I was talking to someone else about this, who's covered the Rockies for a long time, and they were like, they were saying the last Rockies prospect to come up and actually make an impact, the second they were brought up was, you're going back to like Trevor Story, right? You're going back to other really good Rockies players that ended up having, pretty lengthy early young careers with the Rockies. And Bernabel's been an absolute pleasure to watch. He's got good bat to ball contact, which is huge because the Rockies strike out so much. And he's got a good head on his shoulders. So, it's early. Obviously you kind of say, I want to see more, but from what I've seen so far, I'm all on the Warming Bernabel train. He's exciting to watch.
I would say so. So there you go. A small bright spot for you, Christian, to follow along here as we go down the stretch of this season. Christian, thank you so much for taking some time. Really appreciate it. And we will catch up soon. All right. Be well.
Appreciate it, Ross. Thank you as always.
Once again, great stuff there from Christian Saez from DNVR Rockies, joining us on the Hoover Lumber Ace Hardware hotline. Good stuff from him talking trade deadline. Like I said, it's such an interesting time. Like I said, it doesn't matter if you're one of those teams that's like on the bubble. They talk about the bubble in basketball. If you're on the bubble of the Major League Baseball postseason, what do? Are you going to go in and try and get in that sucker, or are you backing out and say, we're not going to try it? It's interesting to see because there's a good number of teams that were on the bubble. Like you was talking about the Giants, the Diamondbacks, some other ones that are on the bubble, Angels. Well, we're going to go for it, or we're not going to go for it. It's very interesting to see how they all pan that out. Okay, let's get to our final break. We'll come back. We'll wrap up the show with the walk-off and some interesting news out of Washington with the Commanders. That's next here on the Morning Blitz.
Kansas Farm and Ranch Radio is the place to turn to weekdays for the latest agriculture news and markets. Being a member of the National Association of Farm Broadcasters, we take pride in making sure you're informed of the latest news from the world of agriculture. Whether it's local, state, regional, or national, if it affects your farm or ranch, you can count on hearing it here. Daily reports from Kansas Farm and Ranch Radio are made possible by Farmers State Bank, Norder Supply of Scott City, Cornerstone Ag, and Woofter Construction and Irrigation.
At FNB Bank, we know family comes first. Whether you're opening a savings account for your kids, buying a new home, or planning for the future, we're here to help every step of the way. With personalized service and flexible options, we make banking easy for your growing family. FNB Bank, serving families, strengthening communities. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Big deals are rolling at Earl Chevrolet GMC in Goodland, Kansas. Drive off in a 25 GMC Sierra 1500 with $3,750 purchase allowance or 0% APR for 36 months and no payments for 90 days. Upgrade to the Sierra 1500 Denali and get up to $5,750 off or 0% for 36 months. Or go big with the Sierra 3500 Pro. $2,750 off or 3.9% for 48 months. Don't wait. Stop by Earl Chevrolet GMC in Goodland today or shop online at earlchev.com.
Looking for insurance that actually puts you first? At the insurance agency in downtown Goodland, we're independent, which means we work for you. Whether it's auto, home, crop, or business, we shop top carriers to get you the best coverage at the best price. No pushy sales, just honest advice from people who live right here in your community. Give us a call today at 785-899-5011 or stop by 1020 Main in Goodland and let's get you covered. The insurance agency. Insurance the way it should be.
Summer is heating up, and Hoover Lumber Ace Hardware in Goodland and Colby has everything you need to make the most of it. Tame that lawn with top-notch weed and feed from Ultimate Fertilizer, and keep those bugs away with powerful pesticides. Plus, Ego mower blowers and trimmers to get that job done fast. Fire up some summer flavor with a Traeger grill or a Blackstone griddle, and if you're building a fence or even fixing a sprinkler, they've got the building materials and supplies to keep your projects moving. Hoover Lumber Ace Hardware, your summer project headquarters.
From the latest scores to the hottest takes,
60% of the time, it works every time.
we're bringing the game to you. You're tuned in to the Morning Blitz with Ross Volkmer.
All right, we got about 5 minutes left to go on the show here today. Thanks again to Christian Science for joining the program. It's great to visit with him and get an update on the Major League Baseball trade deadline. Well, like we were talking about earlier in the show, NFL preseason got underway last night. Chargers beating the Lions 34-7. News coming out yesterday, and it caught me off guard, I guess. All of a sudden, news came across on social media saying that the Commanders and wide receiver Terry McLaurin are so far apart on contract extensions that McLaurin wants out of Washington. And so he is requesting a trade. This blows my mind on both sides. It really does. It is a two-sided deal where I'm like, what are you two doing? First and foremost, if you're the Commanders, you have gone all in over the next couple of years on putting as much talent around your quarterback in Jaden Daniels as you possibly can. He's on a rookie contract, and if we've seen it before, we've seen it again. If you're going to win, you find a rookie quarterback that's cheap and good, and you get all the high-priced talent around him to help him win. That's what the Commanders have done. Austin Eckler, bringing in Von Miller, Deebo Samuel was the most recently big-time guy that they brought in. They brought in all these guys to help bolster the roster. Smart thing. That's what you're supposed to do. But your number one wide receiver, you're not taking care of. If you're Washington, you can't find any way to come close on an extension for him. What are you doing? He's a vital part of your offense's success. You need to have him. And if you don't have him, who's going to fill that role? Because I don't think anybody else on the roster comes close to filling the role that Terry McLaurin does. So if you're the Commanders, what are you doing? Get this guy paid. And if you're Terry McLaurin, from your perspective, look, I get it. You want your money. I understand that. And you've shown that you are a productive receiver, and you were there through the thin times in Washington when you were playing with Taylor Heineke and all these other quarterbacks that you barely know. You stuck through all those bad times in Washington teams. Now is high tide in Washington. You have a chance to go and win a Super Bowl in Washington if you're Terry McLaurin. But you don't want to be there. You'd rather risk it and possibly get traded to, I don't know, Seattle or Miami or something like that may not have a chance at making a Super Bowl now, or the Jets. I mean, I doubt it's the Jets, but that's my point. You'd rather get traded and make your money, which I get it. Everybody wants to make money. I get that. But don't you want to win too? And there is no better time to win in your history of playing for the Washington football team, Commanders, whatever the heck they are or were when you started. Don't you want to I would think you'd want to be there and experience that and help bring a title to the town. I mean, look, I get it. You want to make money. I want to make money. But I know, and I'm sure he's probably asking for ridiculous money, because of the Jamar Chase deals and all that stuff. But to me, I look at both sides and like, what are you doing in Washington? In the Commander side of things, you're thinking we need a number one wide receiver. Oh, we have one. We should pay him, and because we need him for our team to be really, really good. And we have a great quarterback. We have all these pieces. We can win a Super Bowl this year. Pay the man. Then you're Terry McLaurin. Why do you want to get out of here? You have a chance to win a Super Bowl. You really, really do. So I just don't get why these two cannot come together. I don't get why they cannot come together and get a deal done. I will be shocked if they can't get it done and he ends up getting traded. I will be shocked. Just fascinating to me. It's good for both sides. I mean, I think Washington's got to bring the price up a little bit. McLaurin's got to come down a little bit. They got to meet in the middle. They can both win in this situation and possibly win a Super Bowl as well.
And back lifts his ball deep to right. How about a walk-off Brady? Thomas to the 10. Denver's going on to New England. They win it on the first play of overtime. Mahomes swings it. It's there. Hardman. Jackpot. Kansas City.
Well, after off days yesterday, which was probably good, Royals and Rockies could focus on the trade deadline. They open up weekend series beginning tonight. We'll see some new faces and some new uniforms. Colorado is in Pittsburgh to face off the Pirates at beautiful PNC Park. Royals north of the border in Toronto taking on the Blue Jays. Listen all weekend long on AM 790 KXXX for the Royals and AM 730 KLOE for the Rockies. More preseason recognition for one of Northwest Kansas's own. Leighton Cure has been named to the 2025 All-State Warfel Trophy watch list, honoring college football players who excel in community service, academics, and athletics. You want to talk about what a student athlete is? It's Leighton Cure. That is if you looked up student athlete in the dictionary, there would be Leighton Cure's picture. Once again, congratulations on an All-State Warfel Trophy watch list for Leighton Cure. And a cool thing that the University of Kansas and their new booth, the new football stadium, is doing. If everybody saw this on social media, but KU football stadium now has a spot in the stadium where they are recognizing the state champions of football in the state of Kansas. So they have all the football helmets for all the classes, which means our very own Weskin and our very own Hoxie football helmets are displayed now this season at the new football stadium there, the new booth at KU. Pretty darn cool. Like I said, you see the picture, you see all the helmets. There's the Hoxie helmet. There's the Weskin helmet. Pretty darn cool. And all the other state champions as well, which is neat, but still pretty darn sweet. All right, that does it for the program today and for the week. Hope everyone has a great Friday and a great weekend. We'll see you back here on Monday. Check us out in the Sherman County Parade. We'll be there tomorrow afternoon. Wave to us. We'll throw candy to you. Have a good one. We'll see you on the Monday Blitz.
Classic rock plays here. This is Rocket